When I got to art college, I had no idea the surprise I was in for, or the way it would flip my whole life upside down for many years to come. One day, I was walking in the hall when I noticed someone familiar. It was Andy, and I hadn't seen him since we were kids. I was so excited to see him that I immediately ran up to him to say hi. At first, I didn't think he recognized me because he just stared at me with this cold look in his eyes. I felt so disappointed. I'd had the biggest crush on him when we were younger, and seeing him standing there after all those years made me fall for him all over again. The thing about Andy is that he's super handsome, but he's got this cold, dark side to him, and he can be really quiet sometimes. It's probably because when he was just a kid, his dad wasn't around. His dad had an affair with his mom and then left before he was born, so he resented his dad a lot. When he was 10, him and his mom moved away, and I hadn't seen him since, until that moment in the hallway. That semester, we had a life drawing class, and Andy was there too. It felt like fate, and I decided that would be a good time to try and chat to him and maybe ask him out. My best friend Beth was in the class too, so she offered to help me. Usually, in life drawing classes, the models are old, wrinkly people, and they come in and pose naked for us, and it can be super awkward. Well, that's what the first few classes were like anyway, but then one day, a new model called Trey arrived. I was gobsmacked. This guy was an actual model. He had a six-pack and was seriously so handsome. I couldn't stop looking at him. He was like some kind of Greek god that had just fallen down from heaven. After that first class with Trey as our model, we girls literally prayed that he'd be our model every single time. It was the highlight of the week, and everyone flirted with him. We even bought him snacks and drinks because, let's be honest, these life drawing models don't get paid much, so he must have been pretty desperate to take a job like this. Even though I was into Andy, I still joined in with the flirting with Trey because it was fun, and I could see that it annoyed Andy, which secretly made me happy. I wanted him to be jealous. But then, one day, I noticed the way Beth looked at Trey, and I realized she actually liked him in the way that I liked Andy. So I stopped flirting with him and offered to play Cupid to help Beth get Trey. Beth was constantly buying gifts and writing letters to Trey, but she was too shy to give them to him, so I always did it for her. One day after class was over, I ran after Trey, but he was too fast. I had to run all the way to the parking lot, but I still couldn't catch up with him. Instead, I was able to see him climbing into a fancy sports car and driving off. I felt kind of sorry for him. Maybe he also worked as a driver for someone rich. But just after I had that thought, he drove past me, rolled down the window, and asked if I needed a ride. I was so stunned, I didn't even say anything. I just shook my head and stared. I was so shocked, I even forgot to give him Beth's letter. After he drove off, I just kept staring. There was no way he was someone's driver. He oozed confidence, and that's the moment I realized he must have been rich. I ran back inside to find Beth and told her that maybe Trey wasn't as poor as we thought he was. Then I described his car, and you should have seen Beth's face. That only made her even more determined to win him over. The next day it was raining, and Beth hadn't come to class. She said she was sick, but begged me to give Trey the letter. After class, Trey grabbed his umbrella and left. It was absolutely pouring, and I had no umbrella. But I knew how much this meant to Beth, so I ran after him, calling his name. I was completely soaked, and just before I made it to him, I tripped and fell. It was so painful, so I shouted, "Ouch!" really loudly. Trey turned around and totally freaked out. He came running over to me, gave me his umbrella, and carried me into the nearest building. As Trey was helping me, Andy walked by. He stopped and looked at us both, then kept walking. What if he'd misunderstood what was going on? After that, Trey drove me home, and I gave him Beth's letter. The next time Trey came to model, he stayed behind after class and asked me if I needed a ride again. Then he asked me how my leg was doing. It was so awkward. because Beth was standing right next to me, and I started to think that maybe Trey was interested in me. Suddenly, Andy came up behind us and said to Trey, "Give it up already. Are you just here to laugh at me? It's not like you need this money, so just quit." Then he stormed off all angry. Whoa, so Andy and Trey knew each other? After that weird incident, it became really obvious that Trey had feelings for me. In class, he'd always position himself in front of me, and he even winked at me when I was drawing him. The semester was almost over, so one day I said to Beth we should just tell our crushes how we feel. What if we never saw them again? It was now or never. So, on the day of our last life drawing class, we wished each other good luck. I went to the bathroom first to check my hair, and then I went to find Andy. But I couldn't see him anywhere. I was running around looking for him when I bumped into Beth. She couldn't find Trey either. And then we saw them. They were standing outside together, and it looked like they were having a serious argument. We walked closer to try and hear what was going on, but then Andy walked off. Trey grabbed Andy, and they started pushing each other, but then suddenly Trey grabbed Andy and hugged him tight. Beth and I looked at each other, and without even saying anything, we both knew what the other one was thinking. We'd been chasing two gay guys! This isn't the end, though. It's in fact only the beginning of my crazy love story. Stay tuned for the next part, where I'll update you guys on what happened next. In the first part of my story, I told you about how I bumped into my childhood crush Andy and immediately fell for him again, and how my best friend Beth fell in love with Trey, the model in our art class who we thought was poor, but turned out he was super rich. But then, disaster struck. It seemed that Trey had feelings for me. Then, in the end, we saw Andy and Trey arguing and hugging. So, are they a gay couple? Stay tuned to find out. After that crazy moment of seeing Andy and Trey hugging, Beth and I decided to give up on boys for a bit. We had our graduation projects to think about, and that was way more important. Well, my project went well, and after graduating, I applied to work in a big media company as a designer. And I got the job! I was so excited for a new beginning. But on my very first day, who do you think I saw in the elevator? Yep, Trey. Luckily, the elevator was full, so he didn't see me. Then I got introduced to everyone in the department, and to my complete shock, Andy was our creative director. So they were dating and working together? Wow! And for the first time, Andy actually looked so happy to see me and asked me to join him for lunch later. I was excited to see him, but felt sad that he was taken, not to mention gay, so I had to try and view him as a friend only. At lunch, we were catching up, and I decided to just come right out and say it. "This morning, I saw your boyfriend. That's so cool that you work together too." Andy looked confused and said, "What?" So I explained that I'd seen him and Trey hugging back in college and assumed they were a couple, especially as they kept having lovers' tiffs. Andy thought this was hilarious, and then he told me the truth, that Trey was his half-brother. Turns out that Andy was just the product of an affair. His dad was already a married man with a 3-year-old son, which was Trey, and he had been having an affair with Andy's mom. When he found out he'd got Andy's mom pregnant, he abandoned them and never paid a visit nor sent them a penny, despite being super rich. A few years ago, Andy and Trey's dad had died, and obviously, he'd left everything for Trey. All his money, his cars, and, of course, his company. Andy got nothing. Trey and his mom knew about Andy, and Trey actually wanted to have a good relationship with his half-brother. But every time Trey tried to reach out to him, Andy would ignore him. He resented his dad so much, he wanted nothing to do with Trey's family. So, after trying countless times, Trey eventually decided to take the life drawing model job just so he could be closer to Andy and try to get him to speak to him. Finally, they resolved all their family drama, and Trey offered Andy half the shares in the company, and now they're co-owners. So, everything worked out for them, which meant Andy wasn't gay! That was like the best day of my life. I'd landed my dream job, and I got to see Andy every day again. After opening up to me about everything, Andy became gentle and more caring towards me. Soon, we started having lunch together every day. And one day, I made him the sandwiches my mom used to make us when we were kids. He remembered and smiled. And we started reminiscing about the good old days. I even brought in some old photos of the two of us playing in my parents' backyard, and he laughed and said how cute we used to be. Then one night, he asked me if I wanted to go watch a concert with him. Was this a date? I could tell he liked me too, but he still wasn't making a move. Throughout the whole concert, I kept looking at him, but he was acting kinda shy and pretended not to notice. Meanwhile, Trey obviously had no clue that there was something going on between me and Andy, because ever since I started working at the company, he'd been actively trying to win me over. One time, we were in a meeting, and in front of everyone, he told me how beautiful I looked that day. It was so embarrassing. Then there was one night where I was working late, and he crept up behind me and started massaging my neck and told me I worked too hard. It totally freaked me out, but there was nothing I could say because I didn't want to upset him. He was just being nice after all, and technically, there wasn't anything official between me and Andy yet, so I couldn't tell him off. But then one day, Trey started flirting with me in front of Andy. He made some comment about how my drawings of him were always the best in life drawing class, and then joked that he'd model for me again sometime if I liked. Well, that did the trick. After that, Andy paid way more attention. He must have noticed that Trey was into me, so he decided to up his game and try to beat him to it. If only he knew he didn't have to try so hard. I was already smitten with him. But I couldn't stop what happened next. One weekend, we had a company bonding trip and we went paintballing. I ended up on the same team as Trey, and Andy was on the other team. At one point, Andy was heading towards us, and Trey told me to aim for him. But I didn't want to hurt him, so I pretended not to hear Trey. Then, Andy winked at me and said thank you, and Trey noticed, and suddenly, he just went crazy. He pushed Andy over and accused him of cheating in the game, and the next minute, they were rolling around in the mud fighting. Trey told Andy to leave me alone, and that he was just using me so his team would win. And then Andy just laughed and said, "She'd rather be on my team. Stop flirting with her. She's not into you, bro. It's me she likes." Then Trey pushed Andy off of him and got in his car and left us. I just stood there trying not to cry. This was serious. Two brothers were fighting over me, and even though it was Andy I liked, I couldn't stand to hurt Trey like this. Plus, they were both my bosses. What a situation to be in! Ever since that day, there was this cold, deadly tension at work whenever both of them were in the same room. It was unbearable. They totally ignored each other, and whenever we had meetings, Trey would disapprove any project or idea that was proposed by Andy. The company even suffered from some financial losses, all because Trey was so dismissive of Andy's good ideas. It was seriously not okay. Were they really choosing to ruin their relationship and put their family's company in danger, all because of a stupid love triangle? Because of me? No matter how much I truly loved Andy, there was no way I could date him without breaking Trey's heart and messing this up even more. So, in the end, I decided to be the one to leave, before things got even worse. I quit my job, cut contacts with all my friends from that town, and moved to a new city to start all over again. Stay tuned for the next part where I'll tell you all about my life in the new city. You won't believe what happened next! So, to catch you up on what happened in the last part of my story, I finally graduated and started my dream job, only to bump into both Andy and Trey on my first day. I found out that they are actually half-brothers and that they both run the company where I was working. Even though I still really liked Andy, it quickly became clear that they both liked me, and I did not want to come between two brothers. So I quit my job, packed my bags, and tried to start things fresh. I moved to another new city and slowly established a new life there. It was so hard at first because I missed my friends so much, and I really missed Andy. Lucky for me, I landed a job at a fancy art gallery downtown, and that's where I met Leanne, my team leader. Leanne is one of those super inspirational types. She's so strong and independent, and I felt so lucky to be working with her. She really took me under her wing and looked out for me, kinda like a big sister. On my first week, the other girls who worked there treated me like I was their personal assistant. They'd make me walk in the rain to buy them coffee, and one time, one of the girls complained that I'd gotten her almond milk instead of oat milk, and she actually made me walk back to get her a new coffee. Luckily, Leanne saw it all happen, and afterwards, she started shouting at that girl for treating me like that. There was also this guy, Daniel, who was pretty annoying. From the moment I met him, he was hitting on me. But it was clear he wasn't a decent guy. In fact, I later overheard him laughing with some other guys at work, and they were teasing him that he'd lost the bet because I'd said no to him when he asked me out on a date. I felt really hurt that someone would bet on me like that, so I went to Leanne and complained. She had words with Daniel right away and said he wouldn't try anything like that again soon. Then she said she was always there if I needed any help. After that, I started getting into the rhythm of working at the gallery and quickly forgot about the triangle drama. Our team had a big project coming up, and we'd be partnering up with another company who'd be working on it with us. I was so excited and really wanted to impress Leanne with my work. I even offered to go with her to the airport to pick up the guys from the partnering company. Well, you will not believe it. Turns out the people we were picking up were Andy and his colleague. I felt so awkward, and at first I pretended like I didn't know who Andy was, but he kept pulling me to the side, trying to speak to me. Leanne was giving me weird looks, and then she asked if I knew him, so I just said we'd been classmates in college. I couldn't tell her the truth. The car ride was even more awkward, but luckily, Leanne kept the conversation going. In fact, she seemed very eager to chat to Andy. We finally dropped them off at their hotel, and I felt relieved. As soon as we drove off, Leanne turned to me and winked and said she thought Andy was so good-looking. She wanted to know if he was single. Then she basically begged me to set them up. What choice did I have? She'd helped me so many times, so this was the least I could do. I basically owed her. However, I couldn't shake that familiar feeling. I still loved Andy. Anyway, I tried to push those feelings away and help Leanne get the attention of Andy. In our first meeting together, I kept complimenting Leanne, saying how awesome and smart she was. I even pretended that my idea had been hers, just to impress Andy. And then, to top it off, I arranged a dinner with the three of us, but messaged them both at the last minute to say I was sick. Andy didn't buy it, though. He came to me one day after work and told me to give it up already. I was on my way to my car, and he was waiting for me. He said I should stop trying to set him up with Leanne because it was me that he loved, and he knew that I still loved him too. I panicked and pushed him away, telling him that I had a boyfriend and I was really happy now. At that exact moment, Daniel was walking by. I don't know what I was thinking, but I ran towards him and grabbed his hand and said, "Let's go, hun." Then I walked with Daniel to his car so that Andy would believe me. Daniel was totally surprised, but he didn't complain one bit. He liked it and just laughed and said, "Oh, so you're finally interested in me, are you?" I could tell Andy was watching us, so I reluctantly climbed into Daniel's car to make it look real. But that was a mistake. As soon as the door was closed, Daniel started stroking my hair, then my thigh, and then he leaned in to kiss me. I had to endure it because Andy was nearby. But when I knew the coast was clear, I slapped Daniel across the face, told him he was a pervert, then I ran out of his car crying. On the way to my own car, I bumped into Leanne. It was obvious I was upset, but for some weird reason, she didn't seem bothered. She didn't even ask me what was wrong. She just smirked at me, giving me a dirty look. I couldn't stop thinking about it on my drive home. She must have seen Andy and I chatting and thought we were together. Well, that must have been it, because from that night onwards, she treated me horribly. She bossed me around, scolded me for things I didn't do, and made me work overtime to finish tasks that initially hadn't been assigned to me. I was so humiliated, as the other girls at the office were all laughing behind my back, talking about how I was no longer the boss's pet. Even Andy was acting cold towards me. I felt so hurt, but it was my own fault. I'd pushed him away. Later that month, our team threw a party at Daniel's house. Andy and his colleague had been invited too, but I knew he wouldn't show up, and he didn't. I felt so low and was about to grab my coat and go home when Daniel came towards me with a drink in his hand. He gave it to me and said I looked like I could do with being cheered up. I accepted the drink and basically downed it in one. But afterwards, I felt really weird. I was so dizzy and couldn't think straight. Then, I basically blacked out. What was going on? In part 3 of my story, I started working at an art gallery, where I met Leanne, my team leader. Everything was going well until we started working on a big project with a partner, which, of course, turned out to be Andy. Leanne asked me to set her up with Andy, which I tried to do, but it failed, and Leanne started treating me badly. Then we had a team party, where my colleague Daniel gave me a drink, which is the last thing I remember before blacking out. I don't know how long I was blacked out for, but when I regained consciousness, I realized I was in a bedroom. I could barely move my body, and everything was blurry. I tried to get up, but I felt exhausted. I had to hold onto the furniture to make it to the door. When I made it out into the hallway, I saw Daniel, and he dragged me back inside, saying, "Where do you think you're going?" He pushed me onto the bed, and when I tried to fight him off, he said, "Don't even bother trying. You won't escape. I put something in your drink, so now you belong to me." I tried my hardest to get up and run out, but he grabbed my wrist, then locked me in his arms. I was too weak to break away, so I bit his hand. He was taken aback and pushed me back down once again and said, "Okay, playtime over." Then he ripped off his shirt and started coming towards me. I was screaming when I heard a loud bang. Someone had smashed down the door. I looked up just in time to see Andy and his colleague run in and punch Daniel. I have never been more relieved to see Andy in my life. I felt so safe, I literally passed out from exhaustion. When I woke up again, I was in a hospital bed, and Andy was sat next to me sleeping. I didn't understand what had happened to me, so I got up to go and find a doctor. That's when I saw Andy's colleague sitting in the corridor. He looked so happy to see me awake and said he'd just been to the police station. He told me to take a seat and he'd tell me everything. So it turns out that Leanne had been spying on me and Andy that day in the car park. She'd heard Andy say he loved me, and this had made her so angry. She also knew that Daniel really liked me, so she decided to hatch a plan with him. If Daniel could get me, then Leanne could go and try to win over Andy. Leanne was the one who spiked my drink and gave it to Daniel to give to me. Then, when I complained of feeling dizzy, Daniel took me to his room so no one would see me. Luckily, Andy's colleagues saw that and got suspicious, so he followed and then saw Daniel walk over to Leanne saying, "Mission complete. Thank you, Chief. I've got her. I'll definitely pay you back soon." So Andy's colleague called Andy and told him something weird was going on. By the time Andy had arrived, everyone had left, and his colleague was waiting outside. They had to break into Daniel's house, and they got in just in time to catch Daniel before he did something bad to me. They immediately called the police and took me to the hospital. It gets even more shocking. Leanne and Daniel were both arrested for drugging me, and of course, they are now serving their sentences. They both got 5 years in prison because they used ketamine to spike my drink. No wonder I felt so horrid. Andy and his colleague had saved me. I wanted to go and thank Andy, so I went back into my hospital room. Andy was now awake, and I was about to apologize for everything when suddenly he started shouting at me. He told me I was selfish and had caused so much trouble for him and everyone else. Then he said if I didn't love him, why didn't I just tell him? His colleague heard him shouting and came running in to tell him to leave me to rest. Andy stormed off, and I just sat there, crying. What had I done? I got discharged from the hospital a few days later, and I tried to call him so many times, but he never picked up. I eventually found out he'd quit the project and gone back home. I couldn't stand him ignoring me like this, so I packed up all my stuff and flew back to my old city to try and speak to him. As soon as I landed, I went straight to his office, but he just ignored me, even though I was running after him and calling his name. I felt like such a fool and sat down next to my suitcase, almost ready to cry. Finally, he stopped walking, turned around, and asked what I wanted. He gave me a chance to speak, and I told him I still loved him and that I always had, but I didn't want to ruin his relationship with Trey, so that's why I'd left. He just stared at me, and then he started walking away. Some people had stopped to watch, I couldn't believe it. But then he turned around and said, "Come on, get up off the sidewalk. Follow me." I had no idea where he was going, but I followed him. He started walking to the park and eventually stopped by the bench where we used to eat lunch together. He told me I'd hurt him so much, and he didn't know if he could trust me again. I couldn't stand it. I grabbed his hand and said, "Please, Andy, I've loved you since we were kids. You're the only person I've ever wanted to be with." I waited for him to reply, but he was just looking at me. Then suddenly, he reached out to me and took me in his arms and said he never wanted to let me go again. Then he started laughing and said, "Well, if you hadn't cut contact with everyone, including your best friend Beth, you would have known that her and Trey are together now. So don't feel bad for Trey. He's in love." Whoa! I was so happy to hear that. Everything was working out exactly as Beth and I had wanted since college. It just took a crazy long time to reach this point. This is where my story ends. Andy and I are officially a couple, and I have never been happier. Of course, I quit my job at the art gallery, and now I live with Andy. We're currently planning a double wedding with Beth and Trey. I'm picturing a dreamy forest wedding full of flowers, but Beth wants a lame beach wedding, so we keep arguing about this. May the best couple win, right? Hey, it's Saskia, back again to tell you all about my not-so-successful love life. It started during a movie trip with my roomie Ellie, her annoying boyfriend Brett, and his dreamy friend Trent. Swoon! During the movie, someone let out a huge fart, and I ended up being blamed for it. Then, to make it worse, on leaving the cinema, I actually did fart in front of everyone. I thought I'd blown it with Trent, literally. So when he asked me out on a date, my embarrassment made me turn him down, and instead, I went to the library to study. Only while I was there, Trent appeared and saw me with my classmate Carson and came to the wrong conclusion. Worse still, now Carson seems to like me. Now my life's a mess, and Trent isn't talking to me. So after an evening spent watching way too many cheesy romance films and consuming far too much ice cream, I realized that my self-pity parade wasn't the answer. I mean, talk about tragedy. I just couldn't hide away. No, I had to hold my head up high and be as resilient as the characters from my favorite rom-coms were. So the next day at college, I forced myself to look nice and smile as I trailed after Ellie and Brett. Ugh. Seeing as Brett was friends with Trent, I thought it'd be easier to get Brett to explain to him that nothing was going on between me and Carson. "Why don't you tell him yourself?" Brett rolled his eyes. No, I wasn't going to tell him that. I was too nervous to meet him. Why do I have to explain to him directly? You just act like I care about him. I blurted out to cover my embarrassment. And at that very moment, Trent appeared from nowhere. His uncomfortable face made it known that he'd heard everything. Then Brett smirked and said, "Looks like I don't have to explain about Carson to Trent anymore. But would you like me to explain with him about your big loud fart the other night?" I stood there, mortified. I knew Brett was a jerk, but did he really have to bring the fart situation up now? Now everyone was looking at me like I was a comedian. For the rest of the day, I tried to keep a low-key. This was all Carson's fault. Why did he have to act like we were a couple? I needed to find him and tell him straight out that he was delusional. Only I couldn't find him in class, the library, or anywhere else in college. So following Ellie's suggestion, at my lunchtime in the canteen, I messaged him saying, "Why did you say all that stuff?" After a while, he answered, "I want to impress you, 'cause I think that I kinda like you." He's gotta be kidding me! I spoke out loud at the same time as I stood up from my seat, without recalling that I was in the middle of a busy canteen. Oh, great. Now people looked at me like a weird person. Again, just in one day. I wanted to yell out, "Nope! People, you've all got the wrong idea. The weird person here isn't me. It's the guy texting me right now." But getting back to reality, I sat down and mumbled sorry to everyone for my extra behavior. For real, if you like me, you should pursue me in the right way. Don't do such silly things like that. I wrote back. I thought that would be the end of it. Oh, how wrong I was. The messages from Carson didn't end. Instead, he bombarded me with questions, such as what's my favorite hobby, my favorite color, food I liked. At first, I ignored the messages, but then he messaged me. "I just want to be friends and learn more about you." as I truly care about you. If you want me to stop, then I will. Okay, so I felt kinda bad for him. As needy as Carson could be, he was a nice enough guy who didn't deserve the silent treatment, so I began messaging him back. And with Trent, things between us were terrible anyway. He basically acted like I didn't exist, and whenever he hung out with the others and I, he just scrolled through his phone so he didn't have to make eye contact with me. Talk about annoying! One day, tension between us even worsened. That time, I was sitting on the college lawn with the three of them, Trent, Brett, and Ellie, and Trent was ignoring me as usual, when out of nowhere, a girl appeared and angrily approached us. We all looked at Brett, as, let's face it, out of all of us, he was the most likely to mess up. But then the girl yelled at me. "You're a bad person, Saskia. You stole Carson from me." She also added that she used to be Carson's girlfriend, but not anymore because Carson liked me. Ugh! What was going on? I didn't like Carson, I said, but she was assertive that her Carson was too good to reject. Except that I had a boyfriend already. Before I had a chance to think up a reply, Brett said, "Besides Carson, who else can like Saskia?" Right. Brett and his rude comment again, which made me want to kick him straight to the ground. I snapped back at him. For your information, there's a very handsome guy chasing me, and maybe someday I will accept him. As I finished speaking, I was startled as Trent suddenly stormed off. OMG! That was so terrible. Now Trent thought I had someone else. Ugh! Why was my life such a mess? Then, to make it worse, about 1 week later, I walked out of class to see this pretty girl in the hall called Amy. She was flirting with Trent. Right in front of my eyes! Jeez! Why were there so many people interfering with our love story? Ellie and Brett, who had no sensitivity about my feelings, adding the mess Carson and his ex left to me, now a girl wanted to steal Trent? Clearly, if it wasn't me, no one could help us. I needed to talk to Trent, without actually talking to him, as I sucked at doing this. So, taking inspiration from the genre of love, I decided to write a soppy letter. Yeah, you may say it's old-fashioned, but I say it's romantic. I was so absorbed in thought while I was walking to the lecture that I bumped into someone and dropped the letter in my hand. It was Amy, and she helped me pick it up. She saw Trent's name, and even a heart sign beside it. Cringe. Then she looked at me for a moment and said, "I feel sorry for you, but I have to tell you that Trent has a girlfriend." What? I'm sure my heart actually sunk. Amy told me that she'd asked Trent out, and he'd turned her down because he liked someone else. I pictured Trent being all lovey-dovey with some other girl, and it made me feel so jealous. Naturally, I couldn't face my next lecture, so I skipped it and went home, with my undelivered love letter stuffed to the bottom of my bag. Later on that night, I went for a long walk to clear my head. That's when Carson messaged me. "Why didn't you tell me that you have someone else? Why choose him? Why not me?" Clearly, Carson's crazy ex had told him what I said. I wasn't in the mood for his messages right now. He'd caused me enough trouble. So I sent a clear message about my feelings. I lied. There's no other guy. Actually, I have one-sided feelings for Trent. I'm sorry. Carson didn't reply to me after that. Then Ellie called me, insisting I come to a party. Brett even yelled on the phone that I had to come because they were too wasted. It wasn't like I had anything better to do, so I searched for the location Ellie sent me. As soon as I was at the front of the house, I felt so confused, as the house seemed too quiet for a party. Had Ellie sent me the wrong location? I mean, she didn't sound super drunk. Then the door opened. OMG. It was Trent! He walked out and asked me to follow him inside. The lighting was very dim, and no one was here. He took me to the middle of the kitchen, where I saw a small disco ball hang in the room's ceiling. Suddenly, he took my hand in his hand, looked straight at me, and said the 3 words I never expected to hear from him. "I like you." OMG. Did Trent really like me, or was I being pranked right now? My hand was trembling, and my silly thoughts even made me look around to see if anyone was hiding. But then he grinned at me. "I guess you're stunned. But you should prepare for my next confession." He told me that Carson was his childhood friend. Carson teased Trent in the library because he knew Trent's feelings for me, but he didn't expect it to backfire. And to apologize, Carson offered to help Trent pursue me. First, Trent could pretend to be Carson to text and learn more about me. Then, to escalate the process, Carson asked a friend to pretend to be his ex, forcing me to speak out my feelings. Trent was so despaired by my response, so he decided to impersonate Carson one last time and sent that message to me, where he found out that I liked him. Immediately, Trent asked Ellie and Brett to help him out. Wow, this plan was definitely not normal. but the way he nervously admitted everything to me somehow made my heart flutter. I nodded my head as a sign of me forgiving him. "Thanks," he smiled back. I saw his face in the middle of the dim flickering lights approaching mine slowly. This was it. Our first kiss was going to happen. But then I heard a great big fart. What? Brett, Ellie, and Carson appeared in the front door. They were all laughing hysterically, and Brett was holding a fart machine and said, "Well, it's about time you two got together." Trent shooed them off. Then smiling, he said to me, "Let's try that again, shall we?" I nodded, and we kissed. Talk about butterflies! And that's how I ended up with the cutest boyfriend ever. Oh, wait, hang on a minute. My story hasn't finished yet, because that night when I returned home, I received a message from Trent telling me that he was the one who made the first fart in the cinema that time. He said sorry to me, but he was too embarrassed to admit it right away. Really? This was a shocker, but also hilarious. As if our story could become so complicated just because of a very simple thing. Moreover, if that day both me and Trent farted at the cinema, wasn't that our destiny? So everyone loves Christmas, right? Trust me. It's not so great when your boss fires you in November. How was I supposed to buy presents now? Still, I tried to see the positives. I hated that boring, underpaid, overworked job anyway. My ex-boss Adrian was the worst. He's a crazy perfectionist who always gave me ridiculous deadlines, complained about every tiniest mistake, and flipped out if things didn't go his way. No wonder he was still single at 32. Who could ever stand him? I wouldn't miss him, or my tragic ass-kissing coworkers. Anyways, on the bright side, I'd get to spend the entire holiday season with my family and my boyfriend Matt in peace, without being bothered by any annoying work emails. I, in fact, have invited Matt over for Thanksgiving dinner with my parents and plan to spend this cozy weekend with my loved ones. Then, the day before Thanksgiving, I packed up my car and was about to go and pick Matt up when my phone beeped. "Sonia, I don't think Thanksgiving is a good idea. I just think we need some time apart. Hope you have a great time. See you around, X." What? Had he just broken up with me over text message? I immediately rang him up, but he'd turned his phone off. Just great. Here I was stuck at home for the entire Thanksgiving and Christmas period, being a jobless, boyfriendless loser. To make it worse, even my little sister Gina had a boyfriend who adored her. This is so unfair. One night, my parents were out to buy a Christmas tree, and Gina had her boyfriend over to help put up Christmas lights and decorations. Well, needless to say, love was in the air, and that festive vibe didn't help at all with my misery. So I refused to join them and curled up in my room. Feeling so lonely and miserable, I downloaded Tinder. I usually wasn't one for dating apps, but I was feeling so low, I would have happily spoken to anyone. I didn't feel like being me. I was sick of being me, so I used the fake name Crystal and just put some artsy scenery pictures up. I could be whoever I wanted to be. And you know what? It seemed to be working, as a few guys wanted to talk to me. Okay, most of them were also bored, or only after one thing, but then there's this guy called Carl that caught my attention. Like me, he had no pictures of himself, but instead, he had images of song lyrics and movie quotes, including the quote, "The more you know who you are and what you want, the less you let things upset you." I love the movie Lost in Translation, so I sent him a message telling him he had good taste in films, and he messaged me back complimenting the scenery photos I took. After that, we started chatting days and nights. We talked about everything, from the dumb to the meaningful. He actually helped me out a lot, and made the Christmas period bearable for me. It was all going great, until Christmas Eve. He sent me a message to wish me a Merry Christmas, along with, "Let's meet up for a drink." Oh no. Even though the app said he was only a few miles away, I wasn't ready for meetups. I actually was nervous upon reading his text. My heart was pounding, and I found myself worrying about what he would think of me when we met. What if he didn't look like what I imagined? What if he'd be disappointed when he saw me? What does that even matter, though? Unless I developed feelings for him. I don't even know anymore. But it's certain that I couldn't face him just yet. I politely refused his invitation. He was cool about it. Then we still continued to talk like normal. I survived Christmas, and then for New Year's Eve, Gina persuaded me to go to a party with her boyfriend and friends. I wasn't really keen to join, but I guessed I needed to do something to stop this gloominess. As I was walking in, I was so busy brushing off the snow on my shoulder that I bumped into a guy. To my horror, I looked up and saw that it was my old boss, Adrian. Why was he here, in my hometown? He was also shocked, but managed to smile at me. But I just gave him a glare, rolled my eyes, flipped back my hair, then strode off. What a mood killer! I grabbed a drink and sat in the corner in an attempt to avoid bumping into Adrian again. Gina found me and tried dragging me onto the dance floor, but I refused. Then she winked at me and in a tipsy voice said, "You need a man to dance with. I'll be right back." 5 minutes later, she excitedly waved at me and shouted over, "Found one!" I just want to facepalm as I saw her dragging Adrian by the hand over to me. Talk about awkward. But still, I mumbled out a hi, downed a shot for courage, and then chatted to him. Okay, it turns out he was visiting his grandparents who lived around here, and he was actually an okay guy to talk to. After I spent most of the night talking to him, he bought a drink, then said to me,
"I have to admit that after the death stare you gave me on entry, I was afraid for my life. But it turns out I've enjoyed chatting with you."
"Sorry," I blushed.
"No, it's okay. I'd be mad with me too if I were you. Letting you go from work was nothing personal. I had to let one person go, and I only chose you because I knew you were wasted there."
Thanks, I guess," I laughed. "Let's get another shot." Okay, so maybe Adrian wasn't that bad of a person after all. And I don't know if it's because of all the drinks we downed, the atmosphere, or the fact that everyone else around us was sharing New Year's kisses, that I almost felt like Adrian looked like he wanted to kiss me on the strike of midnight too. And I too didn't dodge it. Luckily, nothing happened. I mean, that would have been weird, right? The next day, Adrian messaged me, saying he would help me set up a job interview at a big media company. Wow, that's amazing! Now I had no excuse to sulk around anymore. I needed to get back to the city and sort my life out. Only, I still couldn't get Carl out of my head. I guessed these feelings were real. To clear up my mind, I decided to confess to him online. But then he messaged me back saying,
"I think you're great, and I love talking to you, but I have a crush on my coworker. I'm sorry, but I'd like to stay friends."
Ouch! Rejection hurt! Back in the city, I felt lonelier than ever. Yes, I'd got the new job and it was going well, but I was sick of seeing loved-up couples everywhere. To make it worse, Gina came to stay with me for a while, and she's always on the phone, giggling and FaceTiming her boyfriend. Now I couldn't even escape lovebirds in my own apartment. Feeling down, I messaged Carl again, just casually asked him to meet up later this weekend when I would be back home again for my mom's birthday. Well, to be honest, I just couldn't give him up just yet. Maybe he would change his mind when we met, or I would be able to get over him once we meet. But he made up some excuse to reject me again. That was it, I told myself. It's official over now. Depressed, I called Adrian up for a drink. He arrived looking kinda cute, but the sting of rejection was still on my mind. I confided to Adrian, and I asked him if he thought Carl was a fool for turning me down. Adrian slammed his drink onto the table and turned to me and said,
"You're the fool. Why are you stupidly chasing after some guy online? He might not even be real. He might be some 60-year-old pervert. Why won't you just open your eyes and look in front of you?"
Then he stood up, locked me in his arms, and tried to kiss me. What? I was so mad I pulled myself away from him and slapped him straight across the face before I stomped off. He was meant to be my friend, not some guy after just one thing. I was so hurt, I cried while texting Carl about what just happened, but he didn't reply. The next day, I woke up with a pounding head and puffy eyes. I checked my phone. Adrian had called me, but nothing from Carl. He must have been too busy with his coworker, huh? Suddenly, I heard the door knock. My sister answered it and told me it was Adrian. I reluctantly went out to see him. I guess I needed to at least hear him out. He was standing there looking sheepish as he said,
"I'm so sorry about last night, Sonia. I was slightly drunk, and I guess I've read the signals wrong. For what it's worth, I think that Carl guy is a fool for letting you go. You're amazing."
I wasn't in the mood to talk to him, so said it was fine, then told him to leave. I closed the door and threw myself on the sofa. Then about 10 minutes later, there was someone at the door again. I answered it, and there was Adrian, but this time he changed his outfit. Confused, I grumbled,
"What else do you want?"
Then he politely greeted me.
"Hello, Crystal. Let me introduce myself. I'm Carl. We've been talking for months. I guess, if you think about it, the more you know who you are and what you want, the less you let things upset you."
I stared at him open-mouthed. He just quoted Lost in Translation, and he'd called me Crystal. Then reality struck me. OMG! All this time, and Adrian was Carl? I dragged him inside. We sat down on the sofa and talked everything out. It's so unreal. Turns out the guy I've been chasing after is literally right in front of me. How ironic! I was so happy I hugged him and broke down crying, apologizing. Right then, my sister walked out from the kitchen, took one look at us, and laughed out, "Well, well, well. Isn't this the awful boss who fired you? But most importantly, isn't he the guy I brought to you at the New Year's Eve party? You two owe me big time." We all burst out laughing. So, yeah, after a horrid holiday season, now I finally could start a promising new year with a great job and a pretty awesome new boyfriend. I guess things always have a way of working out in the end, right? Thank you for listening to my story, and wish you guys a good start into the new year. Who put those books on the upper shelf? And why were my clothes in the closet reorganized? Did she seriously go into my room and rearrange my stuff? Unbelievable!
"Avery, dinner's ready."
"Okay, Dad, wait a sec." My dad shouted back.
"What's taking you so long? Come down now. Dinner is getting cold."
"Ugh, okay, I'm coming." As I walked into the kitchen, I gave her a resentful look.
"What were you doing? You know dinner's always at 6.
"Well, that's because she went into my room and reorganized everything. It was like Hurricane Katrina stopped by my room. I had to put everything back where it was." You must be wondering why I had this attitude towards my mom. Well, first, she isn't my mom. She's my stepmom. And second, I just couldn't stand her. You see, my parents divorced when I was 15, and after just 6 months, my dad started dating Rose. My first impressions weren't great. I mean, look at her. Okay, she's kind of beautiful, but her style just doesn't fit her age. She has this whole wannabe rocker thing going on. No, I'm serious. She even has a tank top that says, "I'm a rocker mom." My actual mom was the total opposite of Rose. She looks how a mom's meant to, with her elegant clothes and polite demeanor, and that's also how she raised me to be. Then there's the age difference. Rose is a decade younger than Dad. Suspicious? What if she was only after his money? I thought they wouldn't last, but then 1 year later, they announced that they were getting married. So, yeah, you can see where my hate was coming from. That's enough of me telling you about my family. Let's go back to this boring dinner. My dad just gently said,
"Rose was just helping you. She didn't mean it. Now let's dig in. This smells delicious, honey."
"Ugh, whatever." I rolled my eyes and sat at the table. I looked down and couldn't believe my eyes. It was spinach and sausage lasagna, Mom's signature dish. How dare Rose copy it? First, she rearranged my room, and now she wanted to replace my mom? Talk about a real-life evil stepmom. No way I was going to eat that. So I stood up, said I wasn't hungry, and started walking off. Dad stood up and was about to yell at me, but Rose stopped him. Whatever. I still ran upstairs and slammed my door shut. The next day, when I came home from school, I saw that Rose had a few friends over for beer and pizza in the living room. Look at them. They looked like they were having a band meeting. Normally, women their age have tea parties, not fast food fests. "Hey, Avery." Rose greeted me. I just ignored her and went upstairs. But suddenly, I heard one of her friends say, "What a stubborn kid. Doesn't she have manners? If I were you, I would show the kid who's the boss around here." Jesus. Her friends were awful just like her. Whatever, I didn't care what they said. But then Rose replied, "Hey, don't talk about her like that. Avery's a lovely girl. She's just had a lot going on the past 2 years. Every child would behave the same after their parents' divorce, don't they? She just needs a little time adjusting." Oh, wow. I didn't expect those words coming from Rose. She actually stood up for me? Maybe, just maybe, I've misjudged her. Maybe I should try and give her a fairer chance? So, that evening, when I saw her watching a movie, I walked over with a big bowl of popcorn and asked if I could join her. Rose looked shocked, like she'd seen a ghost or something. Then she gave me a big smile and said, "Of course, I would really love that." I sat down next to her, and we watched Mad Max together. Oh, wow. There was a lot of violence and some weird-looking characters. Normally, I don't watch these kinds of films. I'm more of a rom-coms girl. But that movie was really, interesting. We talked during it, and I must say Rose is actually kinda cool. We were both laughing when I heard someone coughing behind me. I turned around to see my mom standing there with a frown on her face. "Avery? Why didn't you return my calls and messages?" "Oh, I haven't introduced my mom to you yet. This is my beautiful mom, Melanie. She's a kind, gentle, elegant woman, and also a bit disciplined. But that's okay. I still love my mom very much." "Mom? What are you doing here?" "I called you a dozen times, but you didn't answer. Clearly, you're preoccupied. I got worried, so I swung by to check on you." "Oh, sorry, Mom. Rose and I were having so much fun that I didn't notice my phone." My mom knitted her brows and asked, "Are we still on for shopping tomorrow? You need a new outfit for the debate contest, right?" "Yeah, of course. I will meet you at the mall after school." "Oh, you two are going shopping? That's so cool. Can I join?" At that moment, I thought, what a great idea. I mean, so far, they seem to get along okay. But what I didn't know was that a war between my mom and my stepmom had just launched. Rose gave me an excited smile, but Mom, on the other hand, didn't look so thrilled. Maybe she was still mad that I missed her calls? So the next day after school, I went outside and saw my mom standing by her car. Oh, was she waiting for me? I was about to walk toward her when I suddenly noticed she was giving dirty looks to someone. Oh my God, Rose was waiting on the other side of the street. I quickly jumped behind some bushes to hide from them. Don't tell me the two were here to pick me up. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Mom. There's no way I was deciding between them, so I told her I was already on my way to the mall. Ugh. Now, let's talk about my fun family day out at the mall. It was a disaster. My mom and Rose have very different style, obvs, so my mom chose this elegant black vest and skirt for me, but Rose thought I looked like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. No offense, she's a badass who brought justice to women, but Rose was kinda right. That outfit just didn't work for me. Then Rose chose this red dress for me. But, oh man, that's kinda revealing. They were constantly dragging me from this shop to the other like they were playing tug of war. And I was the freaking rope. I couldn't handle it anymore. Therefore, I just chose any dress so they'd stop throwing clothes in my face. On the way out of the mall, we passed a piercing shop. I've been wanting a helix piercing at the upper cartilage of my ear. They look so cool. I asked Mom, but she profusely refused. Her own words were, "It would make you look rebellious." Mom was still strict as always. Nonsense. Rose snorted. "Melanie, Avery's old enough to make her own decisions. If she wants a piercing, then let her." Then she turned to me and said, "Come, I will take you inside." Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I glanced at Mom, and she looked like she was about to explode with anger. But Rose had a point. I'm already 16 for crying out loud. After 15 minutes, Rose and I came out. Oh, thank God. Did you reconsider getting that ear piercing? Oh, yeah. Rose said that a nose piercing would suit me better. What? Uh-oh, maybe the nose piercing wasn't such a good idea, because the tension between them was now catastrophic. I needed a way to bring them together. So I came up with a brilliant plan. I arranged a holiday in Brazil for us all. I have a friend there, Pedro. He was an exchange student at my school, so he could show us around. Dad was in on the plan. At the last minute, he pretended to be busy and canceled his spot. Perfect! Now Rose and Mom would have plenty of bonding time. As soon as we walked into the hotel lobby, they started fighting over who got to share a room with me. What's wrong with them? We just landed in Brazil! So I took the keys from the receptionist and told them they were sharing, 'cause I'll be by myself. Then in the evening, after we all got some rest, I waited for them in the lobby. Man, what's taking them so long? Suddenly, I saw two women walking over, and they were pushing each other. My God, it was Rose and Mom. I tried to keep calm and said, Jesus, can you two please stop acting like kindergarten kids? Mom sneered. Well, Rose over here took a 45-minute shower while I urgently needed to use the bathroom. You know how sensitive my stomach is. Rose rolled her eyes. That's because I have a strict beauty routine to follow. At least you got some sleep. I didn't, thanks to your bulldozer snoring. I certainly did not. Then they began to stare off like two UFC fighters. I shouted, Enough already! Listen up. I just made a dinner reservation for you two to get to know each other better. I have plans with Pedro, so I'll catch you both later. They were about to refuse, but I gave them this really intense look. Well, at least you're having fun. You two should hit a bar. Nothing can top some Brazilian bars. No drinking, and be back by 10 p.m. tops. Yeah, I know. Have fun. I waved at them and left the hotel. The next morning, I saw them talking to each other. Actually talking, not bickering. So I walked over to them and asked, Well, how was dinner? Then they told me it was actually really great. They were able to put their differences aside and got along. Success! So now I could enjoy the rest of the trip. After breakfast, Pedro came by to take us on a hiking trip in the forest. It was so wonderful. The fresh air, the birds singing. Well, maybe except for the heat and the mosquitoes. Pedro wanted to bring us to this spot he said was perfect for watching the sunset. Awesome! It was all going well at first, but then as Rose avoided a tree branch, it accidentally hit my mom. My God, you hit me on purpose, didn't you? What? That's absurd. I was just avoiding the branch. Oh, please, as if. Are you saying that I'm lying? Hey, guys, stop it. Let's be more understanding and talk things out. Like how you did it last night, okay? That's when I found out that they were just pretending to be friends so that I didn't set up any more dinners for them. Oh my God, unbelievable! After their friendship act was exposed, they began speed hiking, like they were in a competition or something. But yep, after only 15 minutes, they were exhausted and couldn't even stand straight anymore. I began to shout at them. This is great! Your dumb feud is ruining my vacation! Then I walked away to avoid them, but of course, not too far. As I walked, I tried to think of another plan to get them close. Then I realized I'd wandered further away from the group. Okay, Avery, don't panic. Pedro had given me a map of the forest. I just needed to get to that marked X. It sounded easy. Trust me, it wasn't. I walked for hours and still couldn't find the spot. Oh no. It was getting dark, and I was totally exhausted. I sat on the ground and couldn't hold back my tears. I was about to lose hope when I suddenly heard Rose and Mom's voices. Oh, great! I was lost and could still hear them arguing in my head. I must be losing my mind. But wait. Suddenly, they appeared from behind some trees. It was really them. I couldn't believe it. I ran into their arms and gave them both the biggest hug ever and cried like a baby. Before we went to the airport to head home, Pedro came to say goodbye. Thanks for the hiking trip, and also carrying out my plan.
No problem. Your plan was definitely crazy, but it totally worked. After you went missing, they actually teamed up to find you. They helped one another when one tripped down or got exhausted, and kept each other motivated.
Pedro grinned at me, then continued.
I too was freaking out when I didn't see you at our meeting point. Luckily, I still found you.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that pretending to be lost was a part of my plan, but what I didn't expect was to actually get lost. Thank God for Pedro. And you know what? After that incident, my mom and Rose grew close. Actually, a bit too close, I think. They even sometimes hang out without me. Can you believe it? Turns out, even though they have two very different personalities and styles, they still have one big thing in common. They both love me.
This just in. Due to the new wave of COVID-19, the authorities are imposing a nationwide lockdown, which is expected to last 2 weeks. The lockdown will begin at midnight.
Oh no, I have to get back to my dorm. We shouldn't waste any more time talking about this jerk anyway. I grabbed my stuff in a rush. Then suddenly, the doorbell rang.
I'll be back in 1 second.
Steven went to answer the door, while I had no choice but to wait for him. Gosh, this whole pandemic situation was so worrying, and I was already not in the mood for any more bad news. From the living room, I could hear the voice of whoever was standing outside the door.
Hey, any chance I can crash here for a bit? Sure, but just get your life together soon, will you?
Gabe? Gabe turned to look at me. His eyes widened when he realized who I was, and he awkwardly looked away from me.
So you two know each other?
Steven looked at us confused. There was an awkward silence between us three before he continued.
So, Janet, this is Gabe. He's my friend from the college hockey team. Gabe, this is Janet, my good friend from high school.
Jeez, this had reached new levels of uncomfortable. Gabe cleared his throat. Ahem. So, where do I sleep, Stevie? Then he headed straight to the bedroom that Steven pointed to while yawning, saying he's going to sleep first. Steven laughed and turned to me, saying,
He's always like that. We were quite close back in college. He comes and sleeps over sometimes.
I stuttered out. Steven, that's the guy I was just telling you about. The one that ghosted me. Steven gave me this astonished look, but he didn't say anything. Ugh, I so wasn't in the mood for this. I think it's best if I go. And right when I thought it couldn't get any worse, a phone call came. Upon seeing me pretty much freaking out as I took the call, Steven must have sensed something was wrong. He asked me as soon as I was off the phone.
Is everything okay?
It's my roomie. She just told me there's been a positive case in our dorm. I can't go back until quarantine is over. Oh no, what am I supposed to do? All my stuff is in my dorm room, and I can't drive all the way back to my hometown. It's like forever, and it's late already. I wouldn't make it anywhere before the lockdown, and staying in some hotels for 2 weeks was surely not a smart choice.
Janet, you can stay here.
Steven gently smiled at me.
Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. I can prepare the couch for you, so you don't have to go sleep in my bedroom.
Aw, he remembers I have slight claustrophobia and feel uncomfortable in small rooms. I was about to reply, but he stopped me, then immediately walked over to the couch and started rearranging it. This was cute, and I did feel touched. Guess I'm staying here for quarantine. I mean, this would be fine, but Gabe was here too. What a small world, and what an awkward situation I'm in. But what choice do I have? The first night, Steven stayed in the living room with me, and we talked a lot.
Do you ever wish we were still back in high school? Things seemed simpler then, didn't they?
Sometimes, It helped that back then I had the sweetest boyfriend. Do you remember when you got the cheerleading team to perform a special routine for my birthday? That's the cutest thing anyone's ever done for me. Steven grinned.
Well, I tried. We were so happy back then. Then college got in the way.
Hey, it's not all bad. We're still great friends. Steven smiled back gently.
Very true.
It felt good taking a trip down memory lane with Steven. He used to be a sweet and caring boyfriend, and he still was such a guy. No matter what, being around him made me feel safe. We continued talking until dawn, then fell asleep. Much later in the morning, I woke up to the sounds of the fridge door slamming. Through blurred eyes, I made out that it was Gabe. He glared over at me before he stormed off back to his room. Ugh! Why did he hate me so much? Then I saw that he'd left pancakes on the table. Oh, these must be for Steven, so I took them over to him. He was eating them as Gabe reappeared.
Hey Gabe, thanks for the pancakes.
Gabe grunted out a, "Yeah," then gave me a dirty look before he walked off again. I tried my best to avoid Gabe, but this wasn't easy when I was stuck in a small apartment with him. I spent most of my time reading a book or listening to music. Yeah, we had history, which I just finished telling Steven the moment before Gabe rang the doorbell. We dated for a month. Everything was cool, and I started to like him a lot. And whoosh, he disappeared. Janet ghosted. I was still very sad and didn't want to deal with any of this yet. Did the universe set up this surreal quarantine situation so I could get over this being ghosted thing? Then after that, when Steven was in the shower, Gabe walked over to me and passed me a candy bar. I put my book down and took it from him, but only because I didn't want to be rude. Then he awkwardly perched on the edge of the couch and said, What's the deal with you and Steven? This annoyed me, so I blurted out, "It's none of your business." "Oh, please. I could already tell there's something going on the moment I walked in." Then, before I could reply, he continued, "Fine by me. Makes sense for a girl like you would fall for a playboy." Steven is a good guy. He let you stay here, didn't he? So maybe you should think twice before you badmouth him in the future. Gabe grabbed the candy bar off me, then stood up. His cheeks were puffed out with anger, and he looked like he was going to explode. That's when Steven appeared and tried to defuse the situation. He led Gabe out of the room, but after that, I was too mad to read. So I sat there overthinking things and feeling even more annoyed than ever. Dinner was awkward. We all sat around the table in deadly silence, and Gabe and I avoided making eye contact. I felt bad that Steven was stuck in the middle of this situation. He didn't deserve this. As I was washing up, I overheard Gabe say to Steven, "Can you give us some space? I need to talk to Janet in private." Steven went off to his bedroom. Then Gabe waited till I'd finished, then asked me to go out to the balcony with him. "Look, Janet, you're smart, beautiful, and very independent. I fell for you right on the first date." Ugh, right. Good luck fooling me one more time. I'm so over it. Seeing that I wasn't taking him seriously, Gabe continued. "I really mean it. That's why you're totally out of my league. I was too cowardly to tell you this, so I decided it'd be best to just disappear and let you forget about me." What? Was he being real? I had no idea he thought that way. He apologized for what he did, and I told him I forgave him. Okay, so maybe Gabe wasn't so bad after all. He's just really insecure. This sucks, as we got on so well. After our conversation, I felt less awkward around Gabe. He started doing cute things for me, such as leaving snacks with a little sticky note that had some cute doodles on it on my pillow, bringing me juices, and showing me funny memes on his phone. I mean, this didn't make up for what he did, but we were confined in a small space together, so politeness doesn't hurt, right? But then Steven started being weird. Whenever Gabe did anything nice, Steven would tut, snort, and on a few occasions, mutter out some rude comments such as, "From ghosting to stalker. Nice." Why was he being like this? Hey, don't tell me that he's jealous of Gabe. Great. Out of the frying pan, into the fire. Then, one lunchtime, Gabe made us French onion soup. As he passed it to me, Stephen shook his head and, laughing, said, "That stinks. This is a poor attempt to impress Janet. FYI, she hates onions." What do you mean? I'm not trying to impress anyone. Oh, please. I know you still have feelings for Janet, but you're no match for her. I watched them with a poker face, since I couldn't process what was going on. Then Stephen turned to me, boldly said, "Janet, so many things have happened and changed, but one thing is still solid. That's my feelings for you. Don't waste your time with this kid." Wow, I sat there perplexed. What was that? And wasn't Stephen a little too mean there? This was a side of him I hadn't seen before, and I didn't like it. Stevie, what is this? I thought we were bros. Yeah, relax, we are. Look, we both like Janet, so she just needs to decide who she wants. So, who's it gonna be? OMG, this is just like that Twyla Saga situation. I have to choose between two totally different guys. Ugh, I hate it. Both this situation and that series. And honestly, I don't like the immature way they're acting now. How dare you two create this whole dilemma by yourself and put me in the middle of it? I choose neither of you, okay? You both had a chance with me and you both let me go. I want to stay friends, but that's it. I stormed off, thinking this would be the end of it. Oh, how wrong I was. One time, I was watching a movie alone and got up to go to the bathroom. When I came back, they were both sitting on the couch, arguing with each other about who should stay and sit with me and who should go. Fed up, I shouted, "Will you both quit it already? You left me for college, and you for your own insecurities. And neither of you is acting like a grown man. I want a boyfriend who I can rely on, and that's definitely neither of you. As far as I'm concerned, any romantic feelings I had toward you both are well and truly in the past." They both gave me stunned looks, and more awkward silence prevailed. Was it a bit harsh on them? Even so, they still needed to know my feelings so they'd stop their own illusions and stop fighting in vain. Luckily, quarantine was almost over, so at least I'll be out of this smothering apartment in 2 days. Oh boy, that was the longest 2 days ever. No one spoke to each other, and the atmosphere was awful. When it finally ended, I muttered out a quick thank you and hurried to the door. Janet, we are still friends, right? Yeah, you're still my friend too, yeah? Stephen and Gabe impatiently longed for my reply, but I just smiled at them both and left. The truth is, I'm not sure I want to be friends with either of them anymore. The last 2 weeks were so weird and messed up that I can't think of anything further. So, for now, I'm just gonna enjoy the relief of getting out of that bizarre being stuck with two exes scenario first, right?
Bye, Auntie. I waved to her. I promise I'll be fine at home alone.
That's good. I'll be back soon, Bee.
Then she left. That's my Auntie Anna. I was staying with her while my parents were on vacation. I was about to walk back into the living room when the doorbell rang, so I immediately ran to the door and looked through the peephole. Ah! It was Mom! I quickly opened the door and rushed out to hug her tightly. Mommy! How come you're back so early? Mom stroked my hair and softly said,
Oh, sweetie, I came to pick you up. How can I leave my little princess alone? Now, hurry up and pack your things.
I gave a confused look. But Auntie Anna's at the grocery store. Shouldn't we wait for her? She shook her head.
No, sweetie. I already called her.
So we quickly packed my things, and Mom led me outside to a rather old car, which was completely different from our usual BMW. Mom, where's Dad? This isn't our car, I asked her. She knelt in front of me and, smiling, said,
"Daddy's waiting for us at the beach. It's going to be lots of fun."
I jumped up and down excitedly. Yay! I couldn't wait to build sandcastles and splash in the sea. This was so cool. On the way, I must have fallen asleep, as when I opened my eyes, it was already dark outside. I got out of the car and looked around. Where was the ocean? All I saw was some small house in an unfamiliar neighborhood.
"Beatrice, this is our new home. Just you and me from now on."
Mom's sudden words totally woke me up. Mom, why? What about Dad? I stammered.
"Listen, I'm sorry. I can't explain it to you at the moment. You're too young to understand."
I had so many questions flying around my head, but looking at Mom's sad face, I knew I shouldn't ask her anymore. The next morning, I woke up excited and curious about our new beginning here. I opened the curtain and saw a group of kids my age playing across the street. So, without thinking, I rushed outside to join them. "Hello, I'm Beach." Suddenly, my mom came out of nowhere, a frantic look on her face as she shouted,
"I've told you to stay inside!"
and pulled me back home. Everyone was gawping at us, including the man who lived across the street. It was so embarrassing. As soon as the door slammed shut, in a serious tone, she said,
"We just moved here. You shouldn't make friends with strangers that fast. And don't talk too much about yourself, okay?"
Mom had never minded me playing with other kids before, so why now? This didn't make any sense. After that, she only let me out of the house for school, and she always kept an eye on me, so that's why I couldn't make any friends here. I resented her so much. I was so lonely. One good thing about it was she didn't have any house rules, so I could spend all day watching cartoons while eating junk food, and she didn't mind at all. This was great, as before we moved here, Mom and Dad never let me do stuff like this. But eventually, I got sick of those junk foods. I felt kinda icky. I longed for Mom's special spaghetti with crab sauce, so I begged her to make it. At first, she refused, saying that she was very busy, so I kept on whining until she finally agreed. Later, I went to the kitchen for dinner, and the room was an utter chaos. Pots and pans everywhere. Mom looked messy too, as she passed me a plate of spaghetti and meatballs instead of her signature dish. Well, okay, it looked delicious anyway, so I took a full fork of it as Mom watched on. Poof! Water! I need water! Gosh, it's so salty. Mom quickly replaced my pasta plate with a box of fried chicken and said,
"Today I'm busy, so I was a bit distracted. Sorry, honey."
Her awkwardness made me laugh. "No, it's okay, Mom." Mom did seem really busy lately, as her phone was always buzzing. The calls even came late at night when I was asleep, so she always quietly went out to answer it. Guess it's hard being a single mom after all, so I tried to be more understanding. And just like that, time passed. Staying inside and having no friends became the norm for me. Still, I often sat by the window and stared longingly at the kids playing outside. Then one time, when I was doing this, Mom appeared and asked me if I wanted to go to the nearby amusement park. Wow, could there be anything better than this? I leaped up, clapped excitedly, then wrapped my arms around her. Honestly, the park was pretty small, and everything seemed kinda tired looking. But this didn't matter, as it was the best day I'd ever had. Mom never used to like rides or games, but today was different. She even got excited when she saw the beanbag throwing stall. She knocked the tins down in one go and won me this giant cuddly bunny. I've never seen her have fun like this before. My mom is so cool. Afterward, Mom left me sitting on a bench and she went off to get some ice cream. Suddenly, I saw her rushing back, and without ice creams. She pulled on my hand and in an urgent tone said,
"We need to go home. We're moving."
So we packed up our things and left in a rush. I kept on asking Mom what was going on, but she dodged my questions. During the car journey, I heard her mutter to herself,
"We're going somewhere new. It'll be exciting. A new adventure. Yes, it'll be fine this time."
I may have been young, but I wasn't stupid. I knew she was hiding something. But she's my mom, and I didn't want to upset her by bugging her with questions. So I stayed quiet and eventually fell asleep. Once again, I woke up in an unfamiliar place and stared out of the window. I wasn't as bothered about this place as I was about the last. I didn't want to get too attached to it, as I didn't know how long it'd be before Mum made us move again. But there was one thing that bothered me. Across the street was a man looking straight at our new house. He looked identical to our previous neighbor. Maybe he'd just moved here too? What a coincidence! I mentioned the man to Mum, but she told me she didn't know him, and then sternly told me never to interact with him. At school, I was the strange kid who didn't talk to anyone. The older I got, the worse this felt. And the other kids laughed at me, and I heard them call me weird behind my back. I felt so lonely and depressed. So at home, I often just sat by the window with a book and tried to pretend that the adventures I was reading about were happening to me. Worse still, Mum was acting even odder than usual. The other day when I got home from school, I found her chucking perfectly good food out of the fridge. Some were even brand new. I asked her what she was doing, and she replied, "It's gone off, so I'm getting rid of it." Then she started scrubbing the fridge. "The smell won't go. Why won't it go?" What was she talking about? Everything seemed fine. What's happening? Then I discovered that Mum often left the house late at night and didn't return till dawn. I knew if I asked her about this, she wouldn't say anything. So that night, I snuck out and followed her. Mum was wearing dark clothes with a hat and a big scarf covering her face, even though it's not that cold outside. Why the disguise? Then, can you believe it? I spotted her going over to the neighbor's house and cuddling him on his porch. I jumped out of the darkness and shouted, "Mom, what's going on? I thought we weren't meant to talk to this man." She gave me an alarmed look. At that moment, Mom received a text. In a panicked voice, she said to me, "Beatrice, we have to go. Now! I'll explain everything later, I promise." Right after that, the mysterious man waved at us and told us to get in his car. Then he sped through the night. After regaining my senses, I turned to my mom and asked, "I hope this explanation is good." Actually, we're in danger, honey. It's your dad. He's an imposter. I only figured this out when I was on vacation with him, and I've been running from him ever since." What? I'd never suspected my dad of being someone else. It made no sense. Then, through sobs, my mom continued to say that my real dad was actually a member of a secret organization, but he had been missing for a while, and now the organization was after us. She often received anonymous messages and calls threatening her. She didn't want me talking to strangers in case they were spies. And those times when she threw all the food out was because she'd received texts threatening to poison the food in our house. She wiped her tears away, then said, "This is Joe. We went to college together, and he's been such a help. We fell in love, but I didn't dare tell you because I was afraid you wouldn't understand." I looked at this Joe guy. I don't know. There was something off about him, but maybe I was just being paranoid. I mean, he had helped Mom out, right? What's that? Ever since I found out about the secret organization, I've been kinda jittery. What if they suddenly turn up and take me and my mom away? I know Mom's worried too, as she seems so distant. I just want to make things better for us both. Then Christmas arrived. It was quite the special one, as for the first time since we went into hiding, we had guests. Well, one guest, Joe. We raised our glasses for a Merry Christmas, but instead of putting it down, my mom gulped it back in one go. "Mom, are you drinking tonight?" I asked skeptically. "Of course, my dear. It's Christmas. Let me tell you, I'm no less than a man when it comes to drinking." I chewed on my lip as I thought about this. Mom had an alcohol allergy, and at the most, she only had tiny sips. Suddenly, a thought came to mind. Maybe Dad wasn't the imposter after all. Maybe it had been Mom all along. She enjoyed the roller coaster rides,
Though, to my recollection, Mom was afraid of heights. She couldn't cook. She now loved Joe, a strange man, and she could down alcohol without being ill. If this was true, then who could I trust now? Something wasn't right. I could feel it in my gut. So the next day, I secretly went to the cops instead of school as usual. Then I found out something crazy. Turns out, my real parents had been looking for me for over the past 6 years. OMG! As for the mother I was living with, who was she? I tried to stay calm while waiting for the police to contact my parents first. And as soon as they got there, the three of us broke down in tears. That's when my real mom told the whole truth. Actually, she had a twin sister called Linda. No one had ever known about Linda, as due to her debt problems, my grandpa rejected her and forbade her to ever show up in front of anyone in the family. But my mom couldn't disown her own twin, so she secretly gave her money. Then one time, Linda was asking for too much that Mom turned her down. Unexpectedly, she came and took me away to pressure my mom to send her more money. During that time, my mom kept transferring her money to make sure I'd be provided for. She hadn't given any information about Linda to the cops, though, because Mom still wanted to talk to her first, though, so that her sister wouldn't end up in trouble. Wow, this was a lot to take in. After that, Mom ran over to Dad, who's in line to talk to the police. She grabbed his hand and begged him to give Auntie Linda a chance. As you see, I missed out on having a normal childhood because of my aunt, and what she did was wrong. But there's a part of me that will always care for her, as she raised me for all these years. And my heart urged me to say, Dad, I didn't want to turn her in either. My dad looked at me hesitantly, but in the end, he nodded in agreement. So we decided to deal with it ourselves without the intervention of the police. Then, the next day as planned, I was in the front yard with my fake mom when her identical twin marched up to our house and confronted her. Once my Auntie Linda got over the initial shock, she confessed everything to me. It was sad, but glad that it's all over now. Mom paid off her sister's debts with one condition, that she would never, ever get near me again. Now I'm back home, with my actual parents. It's going to take some getting used to, as I've forgotten how to make friends, and going outside alone makes me nervous. Looks like the memories of the adventure with my uninvited Aunt Linda might follow me for quite some more time. I know I have to try and move forward. I can't get back the past 6 years, but I can do my best to try and embrace the future.
I was on my way to Julia's house for a study sesh when out of nowhere, I found myself flying onto the ground. I was so stunned, I didn't even see the ball that had hit me, or the fact there was a cute guy rushing over to check if I was okay. He helped me up and apologized. Then he pulled a Band-Aid out of his bag. Oh my, who is he? I'd scraped my hand pretty badly, but I almost didn't mind because now I was face to face with a gorgeous guy. In fact, I was so busy staring at him and blushing that I didn't even notice Julia marching towards us.
What are you two doing?
Turns out the cute guy was Callum, Julia's boyfriend. Ugh, Julia. Of course. Every nice thing is always hers. I'm Jenny, by the way, and that lucky girl is Julia. She's the daughter of the richest guy in town, Mr. Walsh. We're supposed to be friends, but we honestly have nothing in common. I mean, my family is pretty poor. It's not our fault, though. My dad sadly passed away, and so it's just me and my mom trying to make ends meet. Julia, on the other hand, has a silver spoon shoved down her throat. But fate still brought us together. I know it's kind of wrong, but that night I couldn't stop thinking about Callum. He now, in fact, gave me motivation for the next study session with bossy Julia, as maybe he would be there again. I even put on makeup and skipping on the way to her house the next day. But, well, it was all for nothing, because Callum was nowhere to be seen. Instead, I had to sit and listen to Julia go on and on about her trip to Paris. I pretended that I was okay, but actually, I always dreamed of visiting the city of light and gazing up at the Eiffel Tower ever since watching Emily in Paris. Dream on, Jenny. Anyway, Julia was incessant. She loved making me look like a fool, and even said, "Aw, poor Jenny. Maybe one day you'll get to go to Paris. But until then, you can just look at all my photos." Honestly, why was she so cruel to me? Last year around my birthday, she'd even shown me a fashion magazine and asked me which dress I liked best. I thought she was buying gifts for me, but instead, she showed up at my party in the exact dress I pointed out. I couldn't believe it. She just winked at me and laughed, and I seriously wanted to scream at her. Anyway, after looking at about 1 billion Paris pics, Mr. Walsh appeared. He looked happy to see us sitting so close and studying together. If only he knew the truth. But I had to pretend I had a lot of fun with Julia and helping her study, at least for his sake. Mr. Walsh was a good friend of our family, and ever since my dad passed away, he'd been looking out for me, and was even paying my school fees. I couldn't let him down. But you know what? I actually started to get excited to go over to Julia's now, as the thought of bumping into Callum again gave me butterflies. I even got myself a new hairstyle, but he was never there, and I always left feeling disappointed. Then one time, after school, it started to rain dogs and cats, and I had to run for it. Then suddenly I felt an umbrella over my head. Guess what? It was Callum coming to the rescue. It was like something out of a romantic movie. He even offered me a lift home. My heart was racing so hard I was afraid he'd hear it. I just sat there in silence, dripping rain all over his clean car. I even caught him looking over at me a few times, and my heart felt like it was going to leap out of my chest. He pulled up at my house, so I was about to get out when he touched my arm and said, "Can I get your number?" I was confused. I mean, wasn't he Julia's boyfriend? He then explained that he was just hired to be her fake boyfriend so that all the flirty boys would get out of her way. Wow, I couldn't believe it. He asked me to keep it a secret, as Julia would end us both if this story got out. Okay, it all made sense now. That's why he never came over to her house. I felt so happy. Over the next few days, Callum and I chatted a lot on the phone, and then eventually he asked me out on a date. We went to the fun fair, and right away he held my hand. It made me feel so special, and I never wanted him to let go. We were having so much fun. Then a familiar voice pierced the air. "Well, well, well. Isn't that my dear friend, Jenny?" I felt dread rush through my whole body. We turned around, and there was Julia and her girl gang all standing there with their arms crossed. Callum dropped my hand and rushed to Julia's side.
"It was all her, babe. You gotta see the messages she sent. She's been flirting with me for weeks. It's pathetic."
Whoa, was he for real? A second ago he was about to lean in for a kiss, and now he was bad-mouthing me? How could he be so two-faced? I tried to explain to Julia, but she wouldn't listen. She just called me a traitor in front of everyone, and told all her friends to lock up their boyfriends in case I try it on with one of theirs next. I was devastated. Everyone was staring at me and judging me. Ugh, if only I could vanish into thin air right now. And as I was thinking about where I could escape to, a guy appeared, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me away. It was Stefan, the guy who lived across the road from me. I didn't understand why he helped me, but I was so grateful that he did. He walked me home and tried to cheer me up by saying how his mom used to love our bakery so much, and that the carrot cake my mom made was his mom's fave. This made me smile, thinking back on all those happy times in our family bakery. When my dad had died, we'd had to sell it to pay off some debt, and life had become quite difficult. Luckily, Mr. Walsh was helping out, but after what just happened with Julia, I wasn't sure I'd be able to face him. The next day at school, everyone was staring at me. I couldn't even find a place to sit at lunch. What had I done? I'd ruined everything. And then it got worse. My phone beeped. It was Mr. Walsh. He said he was so disappointed in me and that I no longer needed to come and tutor his daughter. I wanted to cry, and at the same time I felt so much relief. But then I read on and he said,
"I'm sorry, but I can't keep my promise anymore. I'll continue to subsidize your school fees, but you'll have to figure something out for college. Good luck."
My heart plummeted. Not only had I been shunned by everyone at school and backstabbed by Callum, but now the door to college was being slammed in my face too. What would I do? My life was over. I felt so sick. I just walked out of the canteen and went home. I didn't dare go to school over the next few days. I was miserable. And just when I'd given up all hope, there was a knock at my door. It was Callum. What was he doing here? He said he was sorry for what had happened and that he missed me so much. Then he asked me if I'd be interested in being his secret girlfriend. What in the world? I was so angry, I wanted to slam the door in his face. But he was fast enough to catch my hand, which took me aback. At that exact moment, Stefan happened to walk past. Seeing me standing there with Callum, his face changed and he immediately walked away. Oh, no. I definitely couldn't let him misunderstand anything about me anymore. He's the only friend I had left. I yanked my arm away from Callum and chased after Stefan. I finally caught up with him and blurted out how I'd been feeling like the whole world was against me and that I didn't know what to do. He told me to calm down, then we went to sit on a bench in the park, as he let me confide everything in him. By the time I finished talking, I was on the verge of tears. Then he said, "Listen, Jenny, you're better than this. Don't dim to fit in with those people at your school. Good people will see you for the real you. You're strong, and you can get through anything. I know you can." He was right. I was better than this. I didn't need to sink as low as Julia and her friends, and I certainly didn't need to rely on Mr. Walsh's money. I'd figure this out by myself, like I always did. So I applied for a part-time job at a coffee shop. Earning my own money felt so good. Suddenly I felt free, and I knew everything was going to be okay. But then one day when I was working, Julia and her gang came in. They still weren't over what happened, and in front of everyone, they brought up what I'd done to humiliate me, and they even recorded it, and I couldn't stop shaking. This was too much. That's when I threw a cup of coffee all over Julia and ran out of there. Julia shouted after me that she was going to tell my mom everything I'd done. Without a doubt, Julia really did it. She even sent my mom photos of me and Callum at the fair. And well, my mom didn't take it well. I rushed home to try and explain after Mom yelled at me over the phone. But then I couldn't find Mom anywhere. I called her phone and a man answered. He said my mom was in a hospital after she fainted? Oh dear good God! I got to the hospital immediately and found out that she had collapsed from shock, but thankfully she was okay. She had to stay in the rest of the day to be monitored, so I went to get us both a cup of coffee. That's when I saw him. Callum. He was in the ward next door sitting with some girl. I almost dropped the coffee out of shock. They looked close. I waited until he'd left, and then I went to ask the girl if Callum was her boyfriend. Well, turns out they'd been dating for 2 years already. So he was triple cheating? The girl deserved to know the truth, so I took a deep breath and told her everything. She was so upset. We decided to get our own back. So the girl called Callum and asked him to come back. As soon as he arrived, we confronted him and got the truth once and for all. He was never Julia's real boyfriend. In fact, here's the shocking part. He was hired by Julia to pretend to date me and ruin my life. Apparently she was jealous of how much attention her dad gave me since my dad had died, and that her dad constantly compared her to me. He kept apologizing to his girlfriend, saying how much he loved her, and that he only agreed to help Julia so that he could earn some money to help pay for her medical bills. I was stunned. Callum was so apologetic and said he'd come clean about everything. He posted it on the school forum to clear my name, and to everyone to see the ugly truth about Julia. And of course, when Mr. Walsh saw it, he made her come and apologize to me. And he also apologized himself and offered to pay my college fees again. Do you think I accepted his offer? Of course not. I was standing on my own feet now, and there was no going back. I didn't need anyone's help. So you might be wondering how I could afford college. Surely not on my coffee shop salary, right? Well, after graduating high school, I realized how much I missed the bakery. That was where I truly felt happy. So I decided to study to become a pastry chef, and now my mom and I have opened a new bakery. I've never been happier, and there's one last thing I want to share. Oh, in fact, here he is. Hey, Stefan, I've made your mom's fave. Let's go surprise her. I couldn't stop smiling as Stefan took the carrot cake, kissed my cheek, and we headed for his car. Life is so much more simple now, and sweet, and I love it.